The Oregon Ducks are entering their first season as a member of the Big Ten Conference, and they're about to run through this thing with ease. They don't have a tough schedule. Their two toughest games this year are going to be against Ohio State at home and on the road against Michigan. You're more than capable of being able to beat those two teams. And I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing Oregon go undefeated this year in conference play. Why? Well, this offense is still going to be a elite unit under offensive coordinator Will Stein, who's one of the best, if not the best OC in America right now. You got Dylan Gabriel, who you get from the transfer portal, who was a Heisman contender at one point last year for the Sooners. You got a stacked wide receiver room. You got a lot of talent and depth there. You got Tez Johnson, who was your second best receiver last year behind Troy Franklin. He led you in receptions. He also had 10 touchdowns, over 1,000 receiving yards. You got Evan Stewart, who was the second ranked wideout from this past year's transfer portal cycle. And this offensive line should once again be in the running to be a finalist for the Joe Moore Award as they return 3 out of 4 starters or 3 out of 5 starters from last year's squad. Defensively, though, is where I'm excited to see Oregon this year, because last year your defense was pretty good, but this year your defense has the opportunity to go from pretty good to outstanding. Dan Lanning comes from that Kirby Smart coaching tree, and with him specializing on the defensive side of the football, this defense should play at a really high level. Their defense should be as good this year as what Ohio State's defense was last season. They improved that secondary, which was their biggest weakness that they had last year. This was a secondary that was prone to giving up a lot of big plays in the vertical passing game. That was evident when they lost to Washington the 2 times that they played. Michael Penix carved that secondary up. You get safety Kobe Savage, who was a 2-year starter at Kansas State. He was an all Big 12 second team selection last year. You got cornerback Jabbar Muhammad, who played for the Huskies last year. So Dan Lanning has seen this dude in action. And to me, Jabbar Muhammad is one of the best cornerbacks in college football. He was a first team all Pac-12 selection last year, 3 interceptions, 19 pass breakups as well. He also was really good when he spent his early days playing for Oklahoma State. You got another cornerback coming in from the portal and UTSA transfer, Cam Alexander. You got a really good defensive tackle coming in, Derek Harmon, who was a top 100 ranked player in the portal. You got depth at every position, not only because how well you have utilized the transfer portal, but how dominant Oregon has been on the recruiting trail. If you are thinking that Oregon is going to be in the same conversation that USC's in, you don't know how good they're going to be up front. They're a West Coast team that was only good because they benefited off playing in a weak Pac-12. You're about to get a reality check this year if you're a Big Ten fan, because this Oregon team not only is good enough to run through this conference, but they're also good enough to win it all. Now, are they ever going to win it all under Dan Lanning? I believe they will, and this season possibly could be the first time we see Oregon break through and win a national championship. Dan Lanning spending time under Kirby Smart, he knows what a national contender looks like, and it looks like what 2024 Oregon is going to look like on the field this year. They're stacked up front. Not only do they have really good starters on both sides of the trenches, but they have quality depth. So if they have to rotate some guys in who get tired late, they have the ability to do so. If they have some injuries on that side, they also have backups who are more than capable of providing quality play, and they're really good at player development. No team in college football over the last couple of years outside of Notre Dame and Wisconsin has developed elite offensive linemen for the next level than how well Oregon has. They got really good linebackers. This is all together, all around great team that doesn't really have too many weaknesses at all. You can question their secondary, but with how much they've invested in improving that from the transfer portal, I expect that to be a strength instead of a weakness in 2024. I don't see how Oregon loses at worst more than 1 game. I think best case scenario for Oregon is that they go 12-0. Their schedule is very easy. Maybe that Oregon State game could be a little weird because that is a rivalry game, but for the most part, their two biggest tests come against Ohio State at home and against Michigan on the road. And at worst, you lose to Ohio State because that's probably the only team in the Big Ten that is good enough from a talent standpoint that rivals what you have this year. Because Ohio State, like Oregon, they've heavily used the transfer portal. They pretty much have bought all of the best guys out of the portal, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Downs. So they have a good enough team that's as good as what you have. But the quarterback position, I think, leans in Oregon's favor. I would take Dylan Gabriel over Will Howard. Will Howard isn't a scrub, anything like that. I think he's a top 15 quarterback, but Dylan Gabriel, with him having so much experience and him being around the block for a while, I think he's a top 7 quarterback in college football right now. So I think that Oregon has the edge in that department. And Oregon at this point, even with the few guys that they've lost to the NFL, with how great they've been at recruiting under Dan Lanning, they're one of those programs that they don't have to rebuild. They just retool. At this point, it's not about a matter of if Oregon's ever going to win a national championship under Dan Lanning. It's a matter of when. And 2024 most definitely could be the year that we not only see Oregon win the Big Ten year 1 in this conference, but they also possibly win a national championship. I think that the hype for Oregon is justified this year. This is a stacked team at every single position. If you go position by position for Oregon this year, you aren't going to find too many questions. You may have some concerns about the depth they may have on the offensive line or at linebacker, but for the most part, this is a well put together squad that's been built via recruiting at a high level and utilizing the transfer portal to address pressing needs. Expect Oregon to make a statement year 1 in the Big Ten this season.